What I have here is a data set, obviously. It's a data set with some sales orders, and these orders have some item IDs, item categories, amount of units for the order sold, unit price, total price. And then they have there's two columns here that are empty, and I need to fill those with data. And in order to showcase the if function, I'm going to use it here, and then I'm going to explain why it works. So what I want here is I want to label these individual rows if it's a big order size or if it's not a big order size. If you don't know about the if function or if other methods to do so, if you just use the one-on-one method, you can just go into each and see, okay, so what's the criteria? Any orders more than 5 units is a big order. So I can just write large. Okay, so that's a normal order. This is a normal order. This is a large order. This is a normal order, and so on. And you can keep doing that, but it'll take a while because here there are 600 rows. So it'll take a while to do this. Instead of doing this manually, instead of typing this in, you can put some logic into a formula and let it do it for you. So I'm going to use the if function here to say if the amount of units in this cell is more than 5, then return large. If it's not, so if it's less than 5 or 5, then it's a normal sized order. Oh, sorry about that. It should be a comma. Hit enter, and that's it. I'm gonna copy this down by double clicking the lower right corner here. That's it. Okay, so I know you don't understand why this works. Or maybe some of you do, obviously, but I didn't explain it yet. But can you see the power here? This is actually Excel doing all of the heavy lifting for me. It is going into each row and say, hey, is this a big order or is it not? And then if it is, write large, the word large in column H. If it's not, write normal in column H. So that's pretty great, right? So what the if function does is it actually reads what's in the other cell and then make a decision. It makes a decision instead of you needing to do so. The if function is the pinnacle of logic in Excel. So it's like putting a tiny brain inside a formula. And that allows the formula to make some decisions for you so you don't have to. In this case, it makes the decision to read what's in cell E2, and based on what is actually in there, it does something or it does something else. So here it reads, if the content of cell E2 is more than 5, then write large. If it's not equal to 5 or more than 5, then write normal. So what's happening here is actually something like this. If criteria something else. I'm gonna move this for you so you can actually see it. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna go over here and you should be able to see that. So what's happening here is that it says if a certain criteria is met, if this criteria is met, then something happens. If this criteria is not met, like in this case where the units sold were actually 5 or less than 5, then the criteria is not met and then something else happens. And that's logic. And let's see how that looks in the actual syntax. So the syntax is this. If I type if, then I get this structure. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna move over here so we can see it. So like this. You can see, maybe you can't see if I'm gonna zoom in a bit. It's very small, but I know you know what I'm talking about here. There is, when I type the if function and start it, there is a tiny weeny tooltip box, and that tells me what goes into the function to make it work. And that's the syntax. It's just a fancy word for what goes into the function to get a result out of it. So the syntax here is there's a logical test. That's the first part. There's three parts. The first part is the logical test. That's the criteria I talked about. Then, if that is true, if the logical test is true, if the criteria is met, then something happens, which is this one, value if true. And if the logical test fails, so the criteria is not met, then value if false. So I'm gonna try this with the shipping instead. So what I wanna do here is that I wanna add a shipping cost that is conditional. So if it's a big order, if it's a large order size, then the shipping cost should be higher than if it's a normal order size. So I'm gonna write if. So if the order size is equal to large, then the shipping cost should be, I'm just making up a number here. So let's make it 100. But if the order size is not large, then it's gonna be 50, like this. Hit enter, and then super quickly, we have applied all these shipping costs to the data set. So if I zoom out, we've actually just enriched the data by adding some columns with information that were not there before. That's pretty cool. Actually, it's more than pretty cool. It's the if function, and that's basically how it works. It is super important function, and it'll save you tons of time, but it's also the foundation for a lot of other stuff that you can do in Excel. And the other two functions that we'll be looking at soon, or in a minute, are based on logic that comes from the if function anyways. So it's a very foundational, intermediate / advanced function to know that is gonna help you out in a lot of scenarios. Actually, the if function is a huge topic. This is how you use the standard version of if, but you can use something called nested if functions that are insanely powerful. That is a way to add multiple criteria and keep adding criteria to your if function. Also, you can use if in conjunction with other formulas such as and or. Those two functions are really powerful as well, combined with the if function. That's the first function. All right, so let's just congratulate ourselves for going through the if function, which is super powerful. So the SUMIF function is also very, very powerful. It's not equally powerful, but it is very powerful. And why is that? That is because the SUMIF function, actually, I just taught you about the if function. So you can kind of like figure out what it does. It does something, but with a criteria. So it sums up, or it adds something together if a certain criteria is met. All right. So let's cover that. I have a little report here, a very tiny report. And what I want to do here is that I want to calculate the sales for the different order sizes over here in this data set. So what we did here is we added the order sizes like large and normal, and we have the total prices for each of these order sizes. So what I want to do now is I want to see the total for all the big orders and all the normal sized orders. And that's what I'll be doing with the SUMIF function. And the SUMIF function actually is a bit easier to use. You can say that at least. So like it goes like this: SUMIF, right, equals SUMIF. You're starting a formula, so every time start with an equal. And the function name is SUMIF, so simply just type that and open parentheses. And now you have this small tooltip that might be hard to look to find on the screen right now, but it is there. So if you zoom in on your own computer, if you look really closely, you can see there's a tooltip here that says range, comma, criteria, comma, sum range. So there are three things to put into the syntax of the SUMIF function to make it work. So the syntax, again, it's what you need to put into the function to get a result out of it. And the three things you need to put into the SUMIF function is the actual criteria, that's the second argument here, but also where you are searching, where you are looking or applying this criteria, and then thirdly, what cells you wanna add together if the criteria in that particular row is met. So I'm gonna show you here, and then we can talk about it later. So first of all, I have the criteria range. That's the first range. So I'm gonna go over here in the data set. Now wait a minute, what is it that I'm gonna sum up? I'm gonna sum up the large order sizes. So what I'm looking for now is the column where all the order sizes are. And I'm gonna select that, simply just left click here, that's it. Now I'm gonna continue using the formula up here in the formula bar. So hit comma. So the criteria is, so what's the criteria? The criteria is that I'm gonna sum up all the large order sizes. So I need to tell the SUMIF function that what I'm looking to sum up here is the large orders. I can do that by either typing it here, large. I'm gonna do that for now. And then for all rows where this is true, for all rows in column H where the cell is equal to the word large, then where should I sum up the numbers? And I'm gonna tell you that here, and I'm gonna tell Excel that here in the third argument, just by left clicking the total price column, close parenthesis and hit enter. Now I can see that there are almost 200,000 in the sales for the large order sizes. And I can do the same thing here. So the range where I need to check for the criteria, what is that? That is the order size column. And then I continue the formula up here, or the function up here in the formula bar. And the criteria is that now it must be equal to normal. But this time, instead of writing it, I'm gonna use a reference instead. So I'm gonna go back to the SUMIF sheet here, and I'm gonna point to this cell that contains the word normal. It does the same. This is just dynamic, right? So when I change the value here in that cell, then my formula would change. If I just wrote quotation mark normal quotation mark, then it's not very dynamic. So I always recommend that you use references when working with, well, anything in Excel. The other was just an example. So the sum range is what I want to add together if this is true, and that is the total price, column G, close parenthesis and hit enter, and there are $73,000 or whatever it is here in sales for order sizes that are normal. All right, pretty cool, huh? That's the SUMIF function in a nutshell, and I'm gonna be doing it here as well for the shipping cost instead of the sales. It's basically the same thing I'm doing, but instead I am summing up the cost of shipping instead. So the range is shipping this time, comma, and then the criteria is here in, again, it's over here in the large. It's the word large in this cell right here, comma, and then the sum range is the shipping cost. And actually I made a mistake there because I am now gonna look for the order size in the shipping column. So that's a mistake. I'm just gonna start over here. So SUMIF. So the range I'm looking for, the criteria is in the order size column. Yeah, that's right. And the criteria is that it's gonna be equal to what's in this cell here, so large, comma. And then over here in the shipping column, that's where what I'll be adding together, like that. So the shipping costs for all large orders are 28,200. And what is cool about this is that now I can actually copy this, Control C and Control V here. And this actually works just the same because I'm using a reference, and I'm using references to the entire columns here in the other data set. So that's actually it. Pretty easy, huh? Now I can just copy this over here as well. And then I need to change the references to, instead of looking at order sizes, we'll be looking at categories like this. And what else? And we'll be looking at the bath category, and we summing up the sales instead. So that is this one here, total prices. Yep. That's it, super quick and easy, and that's how you use the SUMIF function, which is one of the greatest functions of all time in Excel. Only combated by the infamous pivot table, but that's another story entirely. So if you like this webinar so far, please hit the subscribe button below and like the video to help me out. I'll be super happy about that. So please like the video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more future webinars, but also all the videos I publish every week. Actually, it's a lot of videos. So the SUMIF function is also in the conditional format, conditional function suite, along with if and COUNTIF that I'm going to be teaching you in a minute. And those, all of those, I cover in my Zero to Hero training program that I'll be telling you more about later. We're having a big promo for the Zero to Hero course, so please stay tuned for that. It's pretty huge, actually. I just didn't want to tell you before, but it's pretty huge, so stay tuned for that. It's gonna be big. All right, I'm just gonna have a sip of water here, and then we'll continue with the last of the if functions for now. Perhaps. And that's the COUNTIF function. So we just went through the if function, which is kind of like the almighty conditional logic function in Excel. And then we went through SUMIF, and now we're gonna go through COUNTIF. So can you guess what the COUNTIF function does? The COUNTIF function over here counts stuff instead of totaling it. Instead of adding stuff together, it counts stuff. But it's called COUNTIF, so it comes with a condition as well. So it counts something if a certain criteria is met. And that is typically used for something like this to count, or this is a pretty standard, simple report that is pretty representative of a simple report in the real world. So what I want to do here is, instead of adding up all the sales numbers for each of the order sizes, for example, or the categories, I'm going to be counting how many orders that were sold in the different order size buckets and the different categories. And for that, I need the syntax of the COUNTIF function, and that is even easier than the SUMIF function. It's called COUNTIF. That's the name. So the syntax is twofold. There's a range and there's a criteria. So it's not like the SUMIF function where there's a range and there's a criteria and then there's a sum range. This is always the same. So you count the stuff where you apply the criteria. So I'm just going to show you here right now. I'm going to count all the orders that are large, that has a large order size. And I'm going to do that by going to the data set, obviously, and I'm going to go here and select column H. And then up here in the formula bar, you can see that I'm continuing. And what the criteria is that I'm counting the large orders, right? So I can just write large like this, like I did before, but obviously it's better with a reference. So I'm going to be using that instead. So I'm going to go back to this sheet, and I'm going to select here the large order size, and that's it. Hit enter, and now there are 282 large orders sold in that data set of 600 rows over here. So in here there are a little less than 300 large orders sold. Now let's do the same here below. Actually, I used a pretty clever shortcut there if you want to know. It's called Control D. So I just go in here and I hit Control D like this, and then the cell above is just copied into the cell that I have selected. It's the same as doing this. Like that. Yep, totally the same. So what happens here is the references are automatically changed because they are dynamic. So because I didn't write large, I referred to the cell that has the large value. It gets copied and changed automatically, and I can see that there are a little more than 300 orders in the data set that are of a normal order size. Pretty cool, huh? So I'm gonna do the same here, COUNTIF, and I'm gonna count the categories here. So I'm just gonna select the entire column D, and I will select this cell over here because I'll be counting all the instances of the word bath. Close parenthesis, hit enter, and that's it. I can just copy these. And that's a quick way of getting some insights of the data you are working with. That's the COUNTIF function. So if, SUMIF, COUNTIF, these are great for doing reports of all kinds. Actually, SUMIF and COUNTIF are the pinnacle of reporting functions if you're not using pivot tables, but that's an entirely different story, and it's not a function. So these are three, the if, SUMIF, and COUNTIF, these are three of the best functions in Excel, period. They are insanely valuable, and they will definitely speed up your work or allow you to do things that were very tedious to do and required a lot of filtering or manual looking and doing stuff in the calculator or copying, pasting. It will take a long time to do this if you were not using these conditional functions. So let's celebrate that with a sip of water. I hope you are liking the video so far, or the webinar so far. Please hit the subscribe button if you want to stay tuned for more webinars in the future. Also, I publish a lot of videos here on the channel, so you'll be notified of that if you subscribe. All right, so now it's time for the first secret function of today. So let's have a little drum roll, right? This is function number 4, and it's actually pretty underrated, I think. Function number 4 is called TEXTJOIN. And in this data set, I'm going to give you an example of how you can use it. TEXTJOIN is used for, well, actually, when I think about it, the function names are pretty insightful as to how the functions are used, right? So SUMIF, sum something up if something, if a criteria is met. COUNTIF, count something if something is met. TEXTJOIN, what does that do? Well, obviously it joins stuff together. It joins the content of cells together. So you can do that. There's a lot of way of doing so in Excel, but some of these methods are better than others. Some of you may know the ampersand method. That's a good one, but this is quicker in some scenarios. So that's why I'm teaching you this, because I want you to double your productivity by learning these functions. So TEXTJOIN works like this. TEXTJOIN, I'm gonna zoom in, maybe that'll help. TEXTJOIN. So it's actually kind of confusing when you look at it here. So that's why I'm explaining this to you. So in TEXTJOIN, in the syntax of TEXTJOIN, and the syntax is obviously what you put into the function to get a result out of it. So TEXTJOIN, the first argument is what is called a delimiter. And that is what goes in between the things you are joining up. So let me give you a bit of background here. I'm gonna join the first names with the last names. I need the full names here. I don't need first names and last names separated. I want the full names. And in order to do so, I need something to join them for me, and that's what the TEXTJOIN function does. So in the delimiter argument, I can choose if I want something in between or if I don't. And what I want in between, I can add inside a quotation mark here quotation marks here. So that could be a space. So quotation mark, space, quotation mark, and that's it for that argument of the syntax. That's it for the delimiter. Let's move on to ignore empty. Ignore empty is something pretty cool in TEXTJOIN. It's only here in TEXTJOIN, so it's pretty cool. I'm just gonna say it true, and then I'm not gonna do anything else right now. I'm gonna explain it later. And then I can select what I want to join. And I want to join the first names and the last names. And a common thing to do is just to do this and then comma this, because that's how the concatenate function works. But this is much better. You don't need to do that at all. You can simply just select these two in the same argument, close parenthesis, and hit OK. And then the full name is generated from the first and last names, Abigail Alderink. Pretty nice. And as you can see here, there is a space in between the words because that's the delimiter I chose for that. All right, this is pretty cool. So let me show you some of the powers of this TEXTJOIN function, because when you compare it to the other functions, you can actually see what that is. So I'm going to use the concatenate function here. That's a legacy function, but a lot of people know that and use that. So in that, I can't do this. I cannot do this because it will not accept this. So I can do A3, comma, B3, and that's it. The problem here is that I also need a delimiter, and that I can write in here like this, and now it works. Okay, pretty cool. But what if there were no first names here, like this? What if that was empty? For some reason, this person did not have a first name, or the first name was in the last name column instead. Actually, the full name was there or something like that. Then you can see there's a space here in the full name column that is unwanted. I didn't want that space to be here. But if I do the same up here in A2, and if I delete the first name, then that does not happen because I am using the TEXTJOIN function. And the second argument of that is this one right here. This true is me telling the function that I want to ignore empty instances. And that means that the delimiter is not applied if any of these cells are empty. And that's what makes the difference between concatenate, also concat, and TEXTJOIN. And that is why TEXTJOIN is ultimately the best function for joining text, especially if you have a lot of it. And by text, I mean the contents of a cell. It could be numbers and stuff, but it's typically text. All right. Let me see what's in the chat. Great to learn about Control D. I'm happy to hear that. TEXTJOIN a lot. Yeah, it is great. Yep, exactly. That's exactly what I was talking about. So it's not the same as the concatenate function. This is the difference, that the concatenate function does not accept ranges, but also you can't exclude the delimiter. And that is done automatically here in TEXTJOIN. So that's all we can cover for now about joining text. There are obviously more ways to do so. I'm gonna hurry up now to the next function, which is the DATEDIF function. And let's see if we have time for this. I'm just gonna put a pin in it because we are actually in a hurry, and I really want to be able to teach you the VLOOKUP function, which is one of the most important functions in Excel. All right, so what I want to do here is I want to find the number of days, months, or years between the start and end dates here. And that I do with the DATEDIF function. And the DATEDIF function is actually also kind of a legacy function. It's not really supported in Excel anymore. So if you write it here, you won't get the tooltip. So you need to remember this, or come back or Google whenever you need it if you can't remember. But it is pretty easy, so I hope this will allow you to remember it. The syntax goes start date, comma, end date, comma, and then how you want, what result you want out of it. Do you want days, months, or years? So you just simply type quotation mark and hit D for days, open, close parenthesis, and hit enter. And now the DATEDIF function has easily calculated that there are a little more than 3,000 days between these two dates. And you can do the same. DATEDIF start, comma, end, comma, M for months. And now you have the number of months between those two dates. For years, it's so DATEDIF start, comma, end, comma, and what goes inside these quotation marks right here, let me know in the chat, and I'm gonna have a sip of water. Yes, yes, that's correct, a Y. Y for years. Enter 8 years between these two dates. Yeah, you guessed it. Good job, everyone. Good job. I'm proud of you. That's it for the DATEDIF function. It was a really quick walkthrough, but it is a super function because it's really easy to use. And yeah, it just does the job. That's it. It's a simple function that has a simple purpose, and it works. This works. It's pretty great. So keep it in your arsenal. DATEDIF, it's pretty cool. Now, okay, I'm gonna introduce a function for you. Well, actually, I lied a bit. I said that the conditional functions, the ones that include something with if, they're over, but they aren't. I'm sorry. So the next function I'm gonna show you here is the IFERROR function. Wow. This is a really easy function to use, and it has a very simple purpose. It's just to show, to manipulate errors. So I'm just gonna create an error here by dividing these two numbers. So we have sales divided by orders sold, and then we have the sales size. So we have like there are 24 orders sold, and the average order size was $357 or something like that. So I'm gonna copy that to the other cells, and then something terrible happens. I get an error here, and that's because I'm trying to divide a number with 0 or by 0, and that is illegal everywhere in the world. So mathematically, it's something like the world blows up if you try to do this, and that's why Excel comes up with this error so it doesn't blow up, right? So, but it's ugly. It's ugly. You don't want to see an error in your spreadsheet. And to change that, and you can change that for any errors using this function, but you need to use the IFERROR function. And the IFERROR function is a function you wrap around other functions, or basically just other formulas, to change what happens if they return an error. So this is a formula that returns an error because it's dividing something with 0. So around this, I'm wrapping IFERROR like this. IFERROR open parenthesis. It has a very simple syntax, and the syntax is what goes into the function to make it work. It's simply just the original formula, comma, and then what you want to happen if it returns an error. So the original function or formula is right here. We don't need to do anything about that. Go to the end of that, hit comma, and then write what you want to be happening if this returns an error, and it does right here. So it could be error. You can write error, oh no, like this, hit enter, and then that's what it's gonna say. That's not really very descriptive though. So you could, a very typical action to take here is to write nothing in between the quotation marks like this, and that just removes the error visually so you can't see it, or you can write 0 here. That's typically what people do. Otherwise, you can do something like this, contact admin, something like that. You can tell the user, you can help the user a bit on what to do next, like that. IFERROR also has all other uses, especially along with VLOOKUP that I'm gonna be explaining next, but I'm not sure if we have time for that. So we're just gonna go directly to the VLOOKUP function. Okay, so VLOOKUP is one of the functions that you guys were most excited about. And I understand that. It's a really awesome function. And it's kind of hard to use, so that's why people really engage a lot when they hear something about the VLOOKUP function, because they want to learn it, but it's not that easy to learn. It's not like the DATEDIF function that is really easy to learn. This is not that easy. So simply what a lookup does, any lookup, it's not just a VLOOKUP, it could be other lookup functions or formulas. What they do is that they search for something in a data set and then return a value in a corresponding column. That's basically it. So here we have a little commission computer calculating program. So what I want to do here is I have these order numbers. Now my boss came in and said, hey, these order numbers, I want you to look those up in the big fat data set over here. And then I want to return who sold them, who sold these orders. I want to know who sold them and what the total price of these orders were, not together, but individually per orders of these orders I listed here. And then I want to be able to calculate the commission for these particular orders. And the commission is pretty easy. That's simply just the total price multiplied by the commission rate. So that's not what we're going to be focusing on here. We just need to return these things. We need to look after the order number and return the sales rep and the total price. And that's what we're going to be using VLOOKUP for. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do it, and we can talk about it later. Enter VLOOKUP. There are 4 arguments that goes into the syntax, and the syntax is what goes into a function, to get it to actually working, to get something out of it again. We have the lookup table, the table array, the column index number, and the range lookup. And actually there are 4. Sounds like much, right? But the last one you never use, or you always write the same. Always write the same. 99% of all cases. So you can just disregard that for now. You just need to learn how to use VLOOKUP by using these 3 arguments. So the lookup value is what you're searching for. That's this one. The table array is where you are searching, and that is over here in the big fat data set we have here. So one thing to note here is that when selecting this data set, I tend to just do it like this. But what you need to note here is that the thing you're looking for, the column that you know that is in, must be in the left side of the table array that you are choosing here. So I'm looking for the order number, and I'm selecting the data set that has order numbers in the left side. If that was in column B, I needed to select this data set instead. So remember that, that's really important. Hit comma. Now the column index number, it tells the function what I want to get out of this. And I want to return the sales rep. And the sales rep is located in the second column of the table array. Now, that just happens to be the second column of the data set too. But it's the second column of the data set. So if I selected this instead, let's just say that I selected this. The second column would be column E and not column B. Remember that. I'm just going to select everything here, and I'm going to return here in the column index number. Sorry about that. That I have already selected that. So the column index number, I just type this in manually, and it's 2. It's the second column of this table array. The last one is if you want to search precisely or approximate, and 99% of the time you want to search for something specific. So you just select with the mouse, with the arrow keys here, you select false, and that's it. That's it. Now we know that the sales rep for order number 4454 is Jennifer Klein, and you can copy this down, and there you go. Now the total price is the same story. VLOOKUP, search for the order number, and we search in the table array that is this one here. And the column index number is the total price, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we are looking for something specific, so false. Hit enter, total price. That's it. That's how you use VLOOKUP. If you like this video, then you really are gonna love my free online Excel training. You can check that out at spreadsheeto.com/YouTube. The bonus function, which is index match. Now, index match is basically the same as a VLOOKUP, right? But it is basically the same. It's not entirely the same. You use it a little differently because it's a combination of two functions. This is for the more advanced user. So if you just found out about VLOOKUP today and you have never used it before, then focus on that. Then let this be inspiration to you instead. If you already know how to do a VLOOKUP or feel slightly more confident about it, try this out. Now, index match enables you to search for something that is to the right of what you want to return. So in the VLOOKUP example, we can only search for the order number if the order number is to the left of what we wanted to return. In this case, the sales rep or the total price. Here, the data is different, and that's a problem. So either we need to change the data or we need to use a different set of functions to achieve what we needed to do here. So the index match goes like this: index, and then you type in what you want to return. And here the data set is simply the small data set to the left. That's easier. So what we want to return here is the sales rep, and that is in column A. I'm going to type that in, comma, and then I'll write match, because I'm going to use a different function inside the index function, and match tells the index function in what row I want to return something from. So match looks for the order number in the order number column here and returns 0. That doesn't really matter. It's basically like the VLOOKUP, true or false. You almost every time write 0 here. And that's it. The sales rep has now been returned for this order number, and the total price, it's totally the same. Index, we want to return the total price, and we want to look up the order number in the order number column 0, 2 parentheses, because we have two functions. Hit enter, and the total price is here right now. That's it. That's the bonus functions. That's one of the most suggested formulas or functions that you reply to when I ask you what functions you want to learn about but are having a hard time doing so. If you want to learn more, please check out this video right here. That should be a pretty good fit for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.